what really and truly got me started in it, I done the one thing that my grandma always told me to never to do. I pissed a witch off. And for
Oh,
those
wow.
and for those out there that says, "Oh, witchcraft is nonsense. It's all mumbo jumbo," no, I'm living proof of that.
Welcome back to the Jupiter podcast. I'm your host, Tom Franklin, and today we have on Mr. Robert Effler. If you have been following recently the podcast, I interviewed Mr. Harley Owens, who talked about one of his encounters with these forest people, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, if you will. And he told me that he experienced this creature with two other gentlemen. First one being Mr. George Lunsford, which is a video I dropped last Thursday. And he told me what he saw. And then I was like, well, you have Robert's contact as well. I would love to hear his side of the story. And guess what? I got him on as well. I will have to say that you will hear me coughing a lot and hacking up along on this specific episode because I am dealing with a pretty bad cold. Also, today is the day that the bridge in Baltimore collapsed. The Key Bridge is Francis Scott Key Bridge. It's where I'm from. And I also just released a video on that one as well. So you can go back and check that out and see what my point of view is. Well, if you like the channel, do me a favor, like and subscribe, hit that bell notification, and you can go over and check me out on Facebook. Go ahead and post some cool stuff. You got any creepy pictures? You got anything you want to show me? Hey, let's go over and talk about it because that's what I'm about. Kind of a collector of stories. And I love to interview people who have experienced crazy things or maybe, a little bit of conspiracy theories, lost history, cryptids, ghouls, all and above. With all that being said, let's get into this interview. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's welcome to the Lost Frequency, not the Lost Frequency. That's my old podcast. I still do that because I did it for almost a year. The Eye of Jupiter podcast, Mr. Robert Effler.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Robert. I'm, like I said, a little sick today, dealing with a head cold, and a little bit of a chest cold. And what about you, sir? How are you?
I don't feel bad. I'm about in the same boat you are, my friend. I'm battling a little bit of hay fever. I had to take some hay over to the barn earlier, and every time I get around it, I'll sneeze my head off, and about like you, hack and gag and cough.
That's what hay fever is actually kind of an analogy to hay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sure, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's interesting. See, I'm learning stuff every day. I've been around. I'm 44 years old, and I had no idea that is what that was. Anyhow, Robert, do the Eye of Jupiter podcast listeners and viewers a little bit of a favor and tell us a little bit about yourself and where we can find you.
Well, you can find us on Facebook at the NCI podcast. NCI stands for North Carolina Investigates. We'll investigate everything from Bigfoot, Dogman, paranormal. We'll even talk about missing people, kind of like David Pilates on the missing 411.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's cool, dude. So you do this as like a hobby, or it's just something that interests you because of maybe some experiences you've had in the past, or what makes your gears turn to want to do that?
Well, to be quite honest, back years ago, if somebody would have asked me about ghost or Bigfoot or anything else for that matter, I'd have probably made all kinds of manner of fun of you. But what really and truly got me started in it, I done the one thing that my grandma always told me to never to do. I pissed a witch off. And
Oh
for those
wow!
and for those out there that says, "Oh, witchcraft is nonsense. It's all mumbo jumbo," no, I'm living proof of that. I lost my first wife, lost my daggum home, lost my job, lost every dollar I had. Finally figured out who was responsible for it, and I didn't know exactly what to do. And I ran into a friend. Well, let's just say I became a friend of this lady who, at the time, unbeknownst to me, she was a witch herself. So
Wow!
I thought, what are we going to do? I discussed everything with her, and she said, "Honey," we call everybody honey in the South, whether you're good friends or relatives or whatever. And she said, "Honey,
In
I'm going to tell you."
Baltimore, in Baltimore, we say "hun," I'm with you.
But she said, "Honey," she said, "the only way in the world," she said, "you're going to get past this." She said, "You're going to have to fight fire with fire." She said, "You're going to have to understand your enemy, and you're going to have to, understand what you're dealing with." Well,
Okay.
I got to researching, got to looking. I studied a little bit of Wiccan religion, studied a little bit of pagan religion. I mean, I'm not a practicing by no means today. Back then, that was about 15, 20 years ago. You know, when you're young, you're going to do stupid things and everything, and then you
Mhm.
eventually learn better. And after everything got settled down, things started turning around. And I just got sitting there thinking one day, I thought, how can I sit here and let somebody else go through the same thing that I did?
Okay.
I can't, in all honesty and good faith, let somebody else go through that. But the going back a little bit further than that, I might, ricochet, from one
No,
time
no
frame.
worries. No worries, Robert. No worries, Robert. I'm along for the ride.
The first ghost I ever saw. I was 16-year old, and tell you the God's honest gospel truth. You talk about one scared little boy. Now I was absolutely petrified. I was dating this old gal. She is from Tennessee, and her grandpa lived about 25, 28 mile down the road. And only way you can get into his house was with a 4-wheel drive. You couldn't take a regular car in there. Well, back then, CB radios was the big thing going.
Oh yeah.
And for those who don't know what CB radio is, it's called a Citizens Band Radio. You could talk from to one another, and not have to pay cell phone fees like you do now and all that stuff. But he had a
And everyone,
CB.
everyone had a handle. Like my father is a truck driver as well, a retired truck driver, and his handle was Gentle Ben. Everyone had a
Well,
handle, and, and like all your friends would be on a certain channel, and they would like, hey, over here on this side of the highway, be careful, there's an accident, and they would constantly always talk to each other during the day. I used to drive,
exactly.
ride with them as a kid, so yeah, I remember CB radios.
Yeah, my handle back in the day for about I still carry it whenever I get a chance to get on the radio. My handle was the Undertaker.
The Undertaker.
The Undertaker. But
Okay,
here's the thing. Here's the funny.
why is
Here's the
that? Because
funny.
there's always a story. There's always a story. Why the Undertaker?
Well, I'm a professional wrestling nut. I mean, I'm not going to lie about it. That's my favorite sport. I'm not into basketball. I'm not into football. I'm not into hockey or baseball or any of the sort. I grew up sitting on my grandpa's knee every Sunday at about 1 o'clock watching pro wrestling
WWF. WWF.
Well,
back
back in
then?
the day, it was Mid Atlantic Championship Wrestling.
Oh, that's even
Then,
before my time. Oh,
oh
wow.
yeah, and then it graduated on up to WCW. No, it graduated from Mid Atlantic to NWA to WCW, and then I got to finding out about what used to be called WWF, which is WWE now. And back in 1990, I heard this. I was watching an episode of WWF, and I heard the funeral march come on. I thought, okay, who in the world is this? Well, Mark Calloway came out, as the Undertaker, and from that day on in 1990, I was hooked. And from 1990 up to this day, I carry that CB handle, the Undertaker. But here's the funny
Yep.
part about it:
Okay.
when I used to drive out on the road from East Coast to West Coast, when I got to the Arizona state line, I had to change my handle.
Why?
Well, unbeknownst to me, which I later found out at about 5 or 6 truck stops, there was a guy that was that went by the handle of the Undertaker on the
Oh,
radio.
oh
And
my
it,
God.
and I mean, I'm not trying to be degrading or anything else for that matter, because this is what truck drivers actually call them. 22 lot lizards, which is
Yeah, we know
hookers,
what those are. We knows what those are. Yes.
and nobody has found him yet. And he went by the handle of the Undertaker, and he drove a yellow Peterbilt. So when I
Okay.
got to Arizona state line, I had to use my cousin's CB handle, which was Silver Tongue Devil.
which is which is very, we're definitely down a dark path if you're going to be using those handles. I mean, like my dad's friend was Turtle Dog, and we did have the Red Devil. That one I remember, the Red Devil. He had one of those echoes on his thing, so it was really hard for me to understand as a kid. But this was like
Oh, I
back in
remember
like the
those.
mid '90s, so I
Oh yeah,
remember I
oh
remember it very well.
yeah.
All right, before we get to the witches, though, Robert, let's go ahead and get the story out of the way. So you're down and you're in Eastern Tennessee. You're out there with my buddy Mr. Owens, Harley Owens. You're out there with my buddy
Hmm.
George Lunsford, and you're out there. I think he said you were with your wife. Is this correct?
That's correct.
Right. So could you maybe go break it down kindergarten style for Tom here, and tell me what you experienced. What did you see?
Well, when Harley and George broke off and decided to go off down into the hollow, I looked at my wife and I said, "Something's telling me don't go with them." She said, "What is it?" I said, "Stay on this road." I said, "I want you within sight distance." I said, "I want you within 70 yards of me." I said, "And I'm going to get about the same distance from you, just in case." And Harley and George said, "Why ain't you going with us?" I said, "Something others are telling me to stay right where I'm at." George said, "What is it?" I said, "Well, be quite honest." I said, "You'll find out in a few minutes." At that time, I had no idea.
Wow,
I mean,
what a
seriously, I had
premonition!
no idea. It was just, I don't know if it was guardian angel pecking me on the shoulder saying, "Idiot, don't you do this." But, but anyways, Harley and George goes off down into the hollow. All four of us have two-way radios. Well, I'm standing there at one spot, and I'm probably 65, maybe 70 yards in front of them. Well, my wife is about 70 yards in front of me. I can't hear Harley and I can't hear George in the woods because there's too much laurel bushes and foliage and everything else.
They were telling me about that. Yes.
And all of a sudden, radio lights up. Harley's a squalling. George is a squalling. Pardon my French. I don't mean to say bad words. But I said, "Boys," I said, "what in the name of God's going on?" "Oh, shit, watch out. It's a coming your way." And I said, "Uh-oh." Well, I didn't know what they'd stirred up. Seriously, I had no idea what they'd stirred up. So I got on to the left-hand side of the road where I could sort of eyeball what was going on. I went reaching for my pistol just in case.
Right.
And all of a sudden, It sounded just exactly like you'd shot something other out of a cannon. There was about 6 crows come out of the woodwork out of nowhere. The whole entire time that we were in there, it was just as quiet as it could possibly be, like if you were sitting in the middle of a graveyard at midnight of a night. There
Right.
was
So,
no.
like, would you describe it as like being eerily quiet, like unusually quiet?
It was so quiet you know you was being watched.
That that seems to be like
You knew
I bring
something
this
was wrong.
right.
You had no idea
Mhm.
what it was.
Right. It seems to me very often it occurs that when these beings, creatures, whatever you want to call them, uh, are there, like the entire like the biosphere seems to be like just kind of shuts up, and it's like this feeling that you supposedly get. So it's pretty interesting that you were kind of in tune with that, but kind of in a way too, Robert. You were also like looking for it, weren't you?
Oh yeah, we were looking, seeing if we could actually get close enough to something other to catch it on camera that somebody take a look at the picture and go, "Well, there's no mistaking that. That cannot be debunked. That's not AI. That's not Photoshop." That's basically what we was looking for. I mean, as far as actually capturing
Are you
something up,
looking for evidence? Yes.
yeah, we was looking for enough physical evidence to where anybody with any amount of intelligence, any amount of schooling, could look at that and go, "Wow." I mean,
Hmm.
basically that's what we was looking for. I mean, we wasn't looking to harm anything. We wasn't looking to flat out catch anything, like some people tries to do. We was just wanting to prove to ourselves and get enough evidence on camera to where anybody could look at it and go, "There's no mistaking that."
Wow. Okay, so it's quiet, eerily quiet. You're on the left side of the road. You reach your hand towards your pistol as you see these crows fly out of the woods. Now, what happens next?
It sounds exactly like a bulldozer coming through the laurel thicket.
Oh, wow.
So I holler on the radio and I said, "George, what in the royal hell have you guys jumped up?" He said, and this is George's exact words as he come across the radio. And again, I apologize to the audience, but I mean, when you get in the heat of something like that, whatever comes to mind is what you're going to blurt out.
Yes.
George said, "That son of a bitch," he said, "is coming dead at you." So I went
Wow.
ahead. I went ahead and cocked my pistol because you get an 850-pound creature barreling down on you at that speed, and I mean, it sounded like a bulldozer coming through the woods, and all of a sudden it just stopped, and I was like, "Uh oh." So my wife hears what's going on the radio, and she looks at me and goes to point, and where she's at, she's got a better point of view than what I've got.
Okay.
She said, whatever it was, just run up to the edge of the laurel line before it come into the clearing and turned. I said, "Oh God, I know exactly what's happened." I hollered on at George and Harley. I said, "Get out of that laurel thicket." Harley said, "Why?" I said, "He's doubled back."
Right. They
George
were telling
said,
me that.
"Do what?" I said, "He's doubled back." I said, "If he's as big as he sounds," I said, "you boys is in trouble." I said, "Get out of there." And this is just from from my point of view, my thoughts, and my take on it. When they jumped him in that laurel thicket, they took off after him.
Yes.
He run out through there for a little ways, and he either I was standing there in full camouflage. I had a camouflage jacket on, had camouflage pants on, camouflage hat, camouflage boots. Only thing I didn't have camouflage on was my face and my hands. He either smelt me or he seen me. It
Right.
had to be one of the two, and that's how come him just just bow up and stop. Because when you come out of that laurel thicket, if you cut back right-handed and go off that little bitty draw down into that creek bottom, creek was probably 16 inches wide at the widest, and higher
Okay.
up probably 8 inches, and it run backwards. I mean, the water run downhill, of course, but I mean, if you was going back up the ridge
Yeah, you
where
ran
Joe,
upstream. Upstream.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you'd have been going back that way, then it'd been easy for him to double back. He could have vanished. I mean, as far as hiding goes, and as excited as George and Harley was, they'd have never known his behind them.
And so it seems to be that Harley is legit, man, and he sees these things because, as far as I know, he's seen it before George seen it. He pointed it out to George, and George says,
He
"That's
sure
just a
did.
shadow. It's just a shadow." And
Hmm.
Harley says, "No, it is not." And then Harley went over, I think, to the left side a little bit,
Yeah.
stepped on the twig, it snapped, and then it came out from behind it. George seen it, and he said, for some reason, his initial reaction is to run straight towards it, and that's when it came barreling down the hill towards you and your wife. Interesting.
Right.
Very
Well,
interesting. Is
see, the
this the
thing is
first?
this. See, that's what makes a great investigator and a good researcher. A lot of people, when they encounter something other like that, the first thing they're going to do is turn tail and run.
Like me.
It's not the smartest thing in the world. Like I said, you're dealing with a creature that's probably 8 foot tall, looks like a 4x8 sheet of plywood in the woods, weighs about 850 pounds, and you're going to run. You're going to chase this thing. It could possibly eat you, turn you. I mean, turn you into a wishbone. I mean, just rip you,
It's not.
rip you to
Yeah.
shreds. I mean, common sense take you don't want to do that, but I mean that's what makes a good researcher. You want to double check, triple check, make for sure that's exactly what you're seeing. It's not a
Right.
figment of your imagination, and your imagination is not going to snap twigs. It's not going to barrel through a laurel thicket sounding like a bulldozer, and it's
Wow. Is this your first run-in with the Bigfoot Sasquatch? Is this your first time being around them, or have you seen it before, or do you have any
I've
evidence
seen
that you've
three of
collected?
them prior to this.
You've seen three of them.
Yes.
Oh wow! Would you maybe go and tell me like one of the maybe pick the best experience or the one that maybe imprinted into your mind that you were dealing with something completely different than you've ever seen before?
Well, the first one that I ever saw, I took another member of the Bigfoot 911 team out of McDowell County, which I'm also a member of that. I took Brad, and I took his brother Nick. We went into a particular area. We were just seeing if there was enough sign to warrant to go back and do a nighttime investigation or even a daytime investigation. We was
You do
basically
this at
scout.
you do this at night too?
Yes.
Oh my lord! All right, so we know.
Only way I'll do it at night is if I know the area real good,
Hmm.
and in case something other goes haywire, like you get jumped by a pack, get in the middle of a pack of coyotes, or you get between a mama bear and her cub, or something like that. You need to know which direction to run.
Right.
Same way in daylight. We'll scout it out in daylight and figure out which is which, and mark trails, and we'll mark them a different color as far as the danger areas goes. Like if you see this, don't go in that direction. You might go off
Okay.
of a cliff. You might go into a creek and drown, or something of that nature. Or don't go this way. You could get on a rattlesnake den or a copperhead den, or you know the dangers are they're
A part of it.
ungodly, and
Hmm.
they're plentiful. I mean, you could if you some of these places there's no cell phone service, and if you don't have anybody in there with you that's got a radio, and you fall and break a leg, break an ankle, or get a stick stuck in your leg or something, you could possibly die.
Right. Right. So you were out there in one of these places thinking about if you're going to go. You were there with Brad and his brother. I think you were saying.
Hmm.
So what
Was,
what happened? Go back. Let's go back into that and kind of sidetrack you a little bit.
well, it was back in 2019. It was around about the 19th or the 20th of November, just before deer season started in
Right.
my
Right.
area.
Right.
And we went out this one area, and the trail just keeps winding back and forwards, just like a grapevine. And on both sides of the trail, it hits in a V like this. I mean, it's steep as it could be. Plenty of leaf litter on the ground. Woods is slick. I mean, you had to be careful what you was doing. And it was around about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Sun was already going down. And I turned around and I looked at Brad and I said, we're about 2 miles from the truck. He said, okay. He said, what's up? And I said, did you bring a flashlight? I said, because I forgot mine in the truck. I said, we got to run in our mouth and I forgot my flashlight. He said, no, I didn't. He said, I forgot my flashlight. I said, well, let's go up through here about 40 more yards. I said, we'll stop. I said, I'm not seeing exactly anything really and truly that warrants, coming back and doing another investigation. He said, no, he said, the only thing he said that I'm seeing, he said, is this tree that's broke off about 4 foot off the ground. It was about probably 8 inches in diameter. I mean, just snapped off. We couldn't find the top to it anywhere. We looked, couldn't find it. I have no idea where it's at. I don't think, in my opinion, that was natural from the wind or from rain, because it hadn't been raining, hadn't been snowing, hadn't been no ice storms or nothing. It weathered pretty, for the most part, been decent for probably about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And that was the only odd thing that we really and truly noticed. Well, we was getting ready to leave. I see something other out of the corner of my eye about 100 to 120 yards out. I see something other flicker in the corner of my eye, and my first thought was, it's probably somebody's beer can that's been in here deer hunting or something other, or a Pepsi can or whatever.
Right.
And I turned my head right real quick, and when I did, I elbowed Brad. He said, "What?" I said, "Look at this." I said, "Look at this." This creature was anywhere between the size of a 5 to an 8-year-old kid, covered in light blonde hair from the top of its head to the end of its toe. And what caught my attention, what was glistening, we were already in the shadow line. The sun was still shining pretty bright upon the ridge up where they were at. And what I mean by they was the creature, and there's also another creature with it. Well, this creature takes off running across a log. Log's probably 16 to 21 feet long. It runs across that log, makes a head first dive into a laurel thicket. Like I said, you could hear a squirrel at 200 yards, and it'd sound like an elephant coming through the woods as dry as the leaves was. It hits the ground just exactly like a house cat. Never makes a sound, nothing. And I'm standing there in shock. The only thing I have with me is my cell phone. Taking a picture was the last thing in the world on my mind. I was just standing there just in disbelief, and I said, "Brad, did you see that?" He said, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Your camera's around your neck. Did you get a picture?" He said, no. He said, "I did not get one." And about that time, I see something other else move in the same vicinity out of the corner of my eye. And I turned my head right real quick. There was another one with it. 4 foot wide, sort of a light brown in color. And the only thing I could see was from the waist up. Well, this creature backs up against an oak tree that is everything you could do to reach around it. I mean, you couldn't put your fingers together like this around that tree, no matter how hard you tried. It just backed up against that tree and slunk straight down. There's laurel in front of it, laurel behind it. Real woody. There's nobody within probably 8 miles in either direction. No houses, no dogs, no cats, no kids, nobody. And I looked at Brad and I said, "There is no way that is somebody in a suit out here screwing with us. Nobody knows we're here." I said, "Your daddy don't know we're here." He said, "No." He said, "Daddy has no clue." He said, "Daddy knows I'm with you, but he has no clue as to where we're at." I said, "Now what are we going to do?" Well, Brad's all excited. He's all jacked up. His adrenaline's pumping. He said, let's climb up through there and see if we can get a better look at them. I said, Brad, I said, ain't no way in God we're going. He said, why? I said, as steep as that is, I said, there's no way. I said, we'll take one step, I said, and go back about 13. I said, we'll never get up there. He said, now what are we doing? I said, hold it, wait a minute. I said, you do know we're surrounded, right? And he said, what? And I said, if you see one, the rest of the time has done it, seen you. I said, we're surrounded. I said, take a look at the environment, take a look at what's going on. He said, uh-oh. I said, yeah. I said, we're in an ambush zone. I said, we're
Oh,
in a kill
wow.
zone, dude. I said, uh-uh. I said, let's get out of here. I said, but before we go, I said, I want to ask you something. He said, what is it? I said, do you have your wood knocking stick? He said, matter of fact, he said, I do. He said, hold on a minute. And he got it out of his backpack. I said, take about 4 steps up there to that other tree. I said, and rap on that thing a time or two and see what happens.
Okay.
So he hits 2 or 3 times on that tree. 85 yards above where the juvenile went, we got 3 wood knocks back. It matched us. Oh, he was ecstatic. I was ecstatic. His brother Nick was ecstatic. We was all standing there. What do we do? What do we do? And I said, it's getting dark. Our cell phones is our only flashlight. We don't have no weapons with us. I said, I think it's time to go. I said, we'll try this again another day. So we
Wow.
backed out on that one. Well, I think it was 3 years ago. I was with him and his daddy and the rest of the Bigfoot 911 team. We were in an area
Hey,
down in
could,
McDowell.
once, Robert, could we maybe take a step back? You seen this? How far away was this? The one that backed into the oak tree. How far away was it from you, if you had to guess?
Probably about 100, 120 yards out.
All right, so you couldn't really make out any. Is any like distinguishing features other than the hair color that you could make out?
The hair was the only thing I could make out because at that distance I couldn't tell facial features. I could not tell no skin tone.
Right.
Nothing. It was, I mean, it was just,
Is, is this the first experience you
looking.
had with seeing one of these creatures?
Absolutely.
Oh
Absolutely.
wow! So what made you want to go looking for them in the first place?
I just wanted to see if they were real. Now,
Okay.
growing up, when I was a kid, and even in my younger years, people mentioned that, and I was like, "Well, you people are crazy. There ain't no such thing as that. That thing, if it is, it's out west somewhere." I didn't know what it was. I had no idea. And I mean, I'd always seen the TV shows and thought, yeah, maybe, I don't know, and I've seen
Okay.
everything in the world in the woods. I've seen deer, I've seen bear, I've seen coons, I've seen possums, bobcats. To be quite honest, I've never saw anything that moved that quick, that fluid, that smooth, and that agile in my life.
Oh wow. Okay.
There's no way in God it was somebody in a suit. No way.
Oh wow. Being as far away from the wood, being far away from civilization, why would they? There would be who's there would be. And how small was the small one? I think you mentioned it. How tall was it again? If you had to guess.
He's anywhere between the size of a 5 to 8 year old kid.
Okay, so about maybe 3.5 foot tall.
Exactly.
All right. Wow. All right.
Only
Fascinating. Okay.
thing I can figure out was we slipped up on them. They odds are they were up there playing, doing whatever, however
They
they
do.
play.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the one that was with the juvenile. I don't know if that was his mama. Don't know if it's his daddy, his uncle, grandpa. However they classify themselves inside their clan, tribe, or however you want to call it.
Right.
But
Okay.
that just, that
So
just amazed me.
so you
That got
guys
me.
got up. So you guys got up out of the woods. You were like, it's time to go. You left, and then you were starting another story about another time.
Yeah, we were at another location about 3 years ago in McDowell County, North Carolina, and we had probably I'd say we probably had about a dozen members in the woods, and we had three teams. We had a team that went to the left, a team that went to the right. Me and my wife, we were the team in the middle, what I call the jump team. So we were just, looking, trying to see everything. And it was around probably 9:30, 15 minutes to 10 at night. You could still see with the naked eye, make out outlines and shapes and everything, but you couldn't make out no features of anything if you turned your flashlight off. Well, I had a headlamp that was rechargeable. Well, it started trying to go dead, and I thought, well, maybe this little booger has got I can take that little battery pack out because I had a sack full of batteries in my pocket, and I thought, well, maybe I can fill it full of batteries and get my flashlight back. Well, me and my wife standing there talking and everything, and all of a sudden she hushed. She just up and hushed. Well, I'm still standing there running my mouth, and all of a sudden it dawns on me. I said, thinking to myself, I said, she's hushed. Something's wrong. She has hushed. I turned around and looked at her, and I said, what in the world are you doing? She said, do me a favor. And I said, what's that? She said, cut your light off. I said, I can't see how to get the power pack off of it if I cut the darn light off. She said, dummy, listen to me. That's off. At the time, I wasn't even thinking. I thought, well, I said, okay. So I cut the light off. She said, can you see me? I said, I can see an outline of you. She said, come down here where I'm at. She is about 15, 20 feet behind me. So I eased down there where she's at. And I said, what in the world's the matter with you? She said, look off the point of my finger. And she is pointing like this.
Okay.
I said, okay. I said, what am I looking at? She said, let your eyes readjust back to the darkness. She said, look off the point of my finger and tell me if that's what I'm seeing. So I get to looking, and I said, oh, dear God. She said, what is it? I said, where did he come from? Lo and behold, no lie, I kid you not. 9 foot tall, as wide as a sheet of plywood, in all his glory, standing 3 feet above the laurel, and the laurel was 6 foot high. There he stood about 65 to 70 yards away. And I mean, this is a flat plain out in the woods. I mean, the ground was flat. There wasn't no rolling hills or anything. And I said, oh my God, there he is. She said, I thought that's what I was seeing. I said, yeah. I said, that's him. Well, he started coming closer. I said, uh-oh. She said, what's the matter? And I said, this ain't good. I said, if he gets any closer, I said, if he decides to charge, I said, we've had it. So I go reaching into my pocket. She said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going after my pistol. Now, I carry a 45 long Colt, a Judge, with me at all times. When not for, I don't want the audience to get discombobulated and say, oh, well, he's out there to kill. No, that's farthest from the truth. If you get in a situation where there, like I said earlier, between coyotes and whatever, you get in a situation where it's you or them, I 10-to-1 odds rather it be them than me. Because I don't want to be on the back of a milk carton. I don't think I'd fit.
Well, that's such a great older reference that I love the reference. So you're just carrying it out there for protection. So you go to reach for your 45 Colt, all right, and then what happens after that?
Well, he sees me reaching for my pistol, and he just stops. She said, what's he doing? I said, he knows what I've got in my hand. She said, what? I said, they've been shot at before. I said, they know exactly what a firearm is. Well, he goes backing up. I said, that's the thing to do. I said, just back up. You just go do your thing. Just back up. Well, he starts going off to our left, which is to his right.
Right.
And he goes back up into oak grove. Now, these oak groves, a big old grove of white oak trees. They range anywhere between 8 inches around to probably 27 inches around. She said, "Where's he going?" I said, "Hold on a minute." And I said, "Let me eyeball the situation a little bit," because I knew where I was at in the woods. Got to looking at it, and I said, "He's going home." She said, "Where's home?" I said, "You see the top of that ridge right over yonder?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "The very minute he goes across the top of that ridge," I said, "if he bears back right-handed and drops off into that other hollow over," I said, "there's a whole big rock cliff back in there." And I said, "I guarantee it's covered up in caves. He's going home." And that,
So you,
sure enough, that was the direction that he went. He just turned and walked off. And I don't know if he was black. I have no idea if he was brown. I have no idea if he was reddish color. Only thing I could see was an outline. It was 9 foot tall. Looked like a sheet of plywood walking through the woods. He had no neck, just like a head set, about like a football player, if you count the helmet
with
and
the
the
shoulder
pad.
pads,
Yeah,
yes,
kind of like a football player.
right.
Well, when we get back towards camp, and I'm with at least 2.5 miles back in the woods away from base camp. So I've been looking at my phone the whole entire time. She said, "What's the matter?" Because I was having to use it for a flashlight because my headlamp had went out. I said, "We come in one hair of stepping in it." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "We don't have no cell phone service. Where we was at all the way till we got within 80 yards from the truck, which was parked at base camp. We were in what we call in my area cell phone hell. No service. I couldn't have called for help. If something other would have went haywire. I couldn't have called for help if I'd wanted to. Well,
All
when
right.
we get
So,
back to the
if you don't mind, Robert, you were saying that when this creature or whatever it is, the outline went over the ridge down to the next holler, which is like a
Mhm,
small valley, which is like a small valley for people who don't know what that is.
right,
Um, and he went to the right. You knew there was caves up there. Are you suggesting that you believe these creatures live in caves?
absolutely,
That's what you feel. Wow. And or do you?
absolutely. That's what I firmly believe.
Okay. Based upon like seeing that, I guess, and based upon maybe research that you've done in the past or other researchers that you know about, or the interconnecting cave systems of the North American continent, or why would you say that?
Well, a lot of people thinks that these little shelters and first one thing know that they find in the woods that's where Bigfoot stays there overnight. Only if he's hunting, because if you get to noticing, like George said, that one on that trail that went in 3 different directions, it was a game trail.
Right.
Those structures are ambush sites. That's what I firmly believe. It's an ambush site. If a deer walks by or a wild hog on the location in the area that these creatures are living in, if they sit real still, who's to say a deer will look at that and say, "Well, that's a stump," and walk right by it. Next thing you know, it reaches out and grabs it, pops its neck, throws it down, throws some leaves over top of it, and sits there and waits on another one.
Right.
I mean, they are the apex predator and they are the
They're,
apex hunter.
they are the perfect uh, camouflaged killing machine of the forest. They are the apex. They are so good at what they do that for
Absolutely.
years people didn't even believe they existed. And now it's
Exactly.
coming to light that they do. That's incredible. If you think about
Well,
that's how good they are, that's the wild part about it for me.
oh yeah. If you take, well, let's just take a black bear for instance. If the lighting and the environment is just right and that bear does not move, you will drive right by one on the road and never see it, even with the headlights of your car.
Right.
I've seen deer walk into a laurel thicket and be sitting there watching them, not taking my eyes off of them, and a stick pop, thinking, okay, that buck may have circled around and come in the other way and turn your head like this, and then turn your head back. That deer's disappeared. You're standing there scratching your head going, where did it go? And then all of a sudden you'll see it move and you'll go, oh, there's where he's at.
Right. Well, because you're looking, when you go deer hunting, I was always taught that that trees go up and down. You're looking for horizontal, and that always
Mm-hmm.
helps. And you never see the whole deer. You always see like a leg, a tail, an ear,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And if you imagine, deer, there's millions upon millions of deer in America. So
Oh, yeah.
if you're a rare hominoid who is, I'd imagine, similarly close to what we are, and you're perfectly suited for your environment, you're going to be, damn near impossible to even like see as well enough prove that they exist. And not to
Well,
mention, they have a sense for things like guns and cameras and all of the above. So to have the kind of evidence that people would, I think if scientists really wanted to, I even think the government knows. Of course they do.
all the
And that
government knows they're
knows.
not they're not going to disclose that to the general public on account of one reason:
Okay, what do you think? Why do you think that the government knows, Robert?
money.
Okay,
If they, you know how, I'm not trying to get political by no means, but you
okay.
remember back when COVID first hit, how people reacted and how ignorant they got?
Yes, towards each other, yes.
Okay. Take that, multiply that by about 5 times. If the government disclosed and said, come on at 11 o'clock tonight and said, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a specimen of Bigfoot laying here on this table. This is what is out here in these national parks. Look how much money and revenue they're going to lose. It's going to scare some
Mm.
people to death. All right, look at the logging industry. You're going to scare some people to death. They're not going to go out here and have nothing to do with it because they're going to be
All
scared
right,
to death. They're going to be snatched up and
that's like a
carried off.
multi. I was speaking to a gentleman yesterday. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry that
Oh
you're
yeah,
affecting.
tourism and these national parks. Why do you think Teddy Roosevelt invented the national park system?
Do you think that's the reason?
That's exactly the reason.
Okay, I'm not trying to be mean or anything of that nature, but based on what? Because you hear that he did it to preserve the natural environment of the country when we did the
That's
manifest destiny
accurate.
from one side to the other. Well, why would you think that, Robert? That's interesting.
Teddy Roosevelt had an encounter with one of those creatures
Uh huh.
back years ago on one of his hunting expeditions, and he did not want to know. I mean, he didn't exactly know what it was, but he didn't want the species to be wiped out. So, what better way than to protect them is to give them free reign and create the national park system so they'd have a place to hide.
Interesting.
And a lot of your national park systems, take Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, for instance. They still haven't found one end to the other end on those caves.
Right.
Okay, over in Cherokee, North Carolina, if you know exactly which cave to go into, Eric Rudolph, when he done what he did, he got into that cave system out there in Cherokee. And how do you think he wound up in Atlanta, Georgia?
I've heard of that. I think George was talking about that. That there's a cave that goes from Cherokee, North Carolina to Atlanta,
Yeah.
Georgia. And for people who are not familiar with this part of the country, if you were to take the roads, highways, the fastest way to get from Cherokee, North Carolina to Atlanta, Georgia, how long would that take you?
See, Cherokee to Atlanta, you're looking at probably about 4 hour ride.
Wow. So that's a very, very, very long and in-depth cave system. Oh my God, Robert, you're blowing me away about this. So, all right, so this show we collect all that. All those are fantastic, and thank you so much for sharing those experiences. But I really want to get into this witchcraft thing that you were telling me about at the beginning, because I live here in Mexico, and I have myself a Mexican girlfriend, and they witchcraft down here is much more prevalent in the culture than it is in our culture. you hear about it, people in the woods, the large birds and witchcraft. But down here, it's like, oh yeah, my aunt's a witch, or my uncle's a warlock, and this, that, and the other. What could you tell me? Like, what happened? Could you maybe walk me into this whole thing?
Well, it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of a little bit on the goofy side to explain, to be quite honest. Uh, but it was unbeknownst to me that I'd pissed this witch off. Seriously, it was entirely unbeknownst to me. My grandma, she was 3/4 Cherokee. She was a medicine woman. She wouldn't admit to being Cherokee on account of when she was growing up. She was always scared to death if you. Well, she was taught that if you admitted to it, the government was going to snatch you up, take you out to Oklahoma on the Trail of Tears.
Right,
And
right.
she never would admit to anything, and she never was registered with the Cherokee tribe out there in Cherokee, North Carolina, or anything. So, usually, thing if somebody got sick when I was growing up, first person they called on was my grandma. They called her up and they had asked her, said, "This one's done this and everything." To give you a prime example, one thing I remember distinctly, uh, this little old kid he drunk lamp oil, which is kerosene
Kerosene.
that goes kerosene.
Hmm?
And they was expecting that kid to die. I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, back then everybody sort of, you didn't know what in the world to do. So they called on grandma and they said, what do we do? She said, hold your thought. I will be back. So grandma goes and gets a burlap sack. And anybody don't know what a burlap sack is, burlap's usually used to house onions or potatoes or
It's like
anymore they
what you
use
use in a
burlap.
sack race, like you would
Yeah,
use in a sack race
kind
at
of
like
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 that.
at a family picnic or something. Yes.
Yeah. And grandma started out towards the woods, and I went running out through there, and grandma just stopped dead in her tracks. She turned around. She said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, Granny, I'm going with you." She said, "No, you're not." I said, "What?" She said, "No, you're not. Go back to the house." I said, "Okay." She said, "Go sit with your grandpa." She said, "Don't you move." I said, "Okay." Well, I know better to back talk my grandma because I know
Oh
what I
yeah.
did.
Oh yeah. My grandmother was the same way.
Well, you didn't back talk her, and you didn't
No. If you back
you
talk, you
you
got the
didn't.
back of the hands.
Oh yeah. I went and sat and talked to Grandpa and everything. She comes back with this burlap sack and hits about this deep with all kinds of herbs and first one thing and another. She didn't show me what it was. She goes into the kitchen. She boils up some kind of crazy concoction. I have no idea. It was all herbal that she had dug up out of the woods. After it got prepared the way she wanted it, she went down and seen that little boy and said, "Make him drink it." Said if he's not better by 9 o'clock in the morning, take him straight to the doctor or take him to the
To the
hospital,
hospital.
whichever one. And where we was at, where Granny was at, it was 30 mile any direction you went to any hospital you took a notion to go to. And by 9 o'clock the next morning, that youngin was up turning cartwheels out in the yard, being just a regular little old boy. As it, whatever it was she gave him, it neutralized the poison in that kerosene.
Oh, wow. So you got well. I'm sorry. I was trying to tell my girlfriend to turn on the lights. So I'm sorry. I'm trying to pay
Oh,
attention
you're
to
fine, bud.
my own interview. So by 9 o'clock the next morning, he was better again.
Oh yeah, it's just like nothing happened, just like he'd drunk water.
Wow. Okay.
There
Okay.
wasn't
So
no ice
okay.
or nothing. No,
So you
no.
angered a witch. Now, how does this go? That you're angering a witch, Robert? How did you do that?
To be quite honest, I have no idea. The only thing I can figure out, she asked me out on a date, and I said no. Because
And
back
you
then,
know that. How does that connect to your grandmother?
well, He just gives an example of
Oh, okay. I
yeah,
got you. Of this. So what we would call a witch, maybe they would call like natural remedies or
yeah,
Native American herbalistic type healing.
yeah,
So, but you can take that and use it for good as well as bad. That's what you're trying to say.
oh yeah.
Okay, all right. So this woman asked you out on a date, and you were like, yeah. So
No,
what started happening? What happened? Like, how did you go? Something is afoul here.
well, when I started my friends started turning on me. I lost every dollar I had. Everything, anything that could go wrong. Like vehicles tearing up. Bills coming in that you knew good and well that you had paid, but the companies was swearing you didn't, but you didn't have the receipt. Stuff
Right.
like that.
Okay.
Lost my wife, and I mean everything. I mean, I was just basically sitting there by myself, and it just threw me into a tailspin. Didn't know exactly what was going on, and this other lady, like I said, unbeknownst to me, she was a witch also.
Okay.
And
Right. You were telling me. Mm-hmm.
talking to her, she hollered at me on the computer, and I got talking to her and found out she was local. I mean, I hadn't said nothing. I mean, hadn't said nothing about what was going on. She said, "I'm sensing something other." She said, "You care to come to my house?" I said, "Isn't your husband going to get mad for me doing that?" And she said, "No, he knows to keep his mouth shut." I said, "Okay." So I
That's
go over.
interesting.
He tells me everything that's went wrong, and I'm sitting there going,
Wow.
"How do you know this?" I said, "Are you psychic?" I said, "Are you playing with crystal balls?" Or, I was trying to make a joke out of it. She
Right.
said, "No." She said, "You've pissed a witch off big time, and she's getting revenge on you." She said, "You don't deserve to be treated like this." And after she showed me some pagan books and some Wiccan books, she said, "Here's what you need to do." So she started pointing me in the right direction, showing me, which steps to take to protect myself and everything else. She said, "Go to the bookstore." She said, "In the New Age section," she said, "and go see what you can find." I said, "Well, what am I looking for?" She said, "Oh, you'll know." She said, "You'll know," because
Okay.
my grandma always told me when I was a little kid. She said, "You are a special individual." She said, "The knowledge you seek or the knowledge you need to know will come to you." I remember my granny saying that, but I didn't know what she meant. Well, Granny's long past. She'd been dead for probably 25 years, I guess. And there's a lot of times some of her words will come back, be, I'll remember what she says. And I went into the new age, and I mean, it was like I was drawn to these certain books. Well, I went ahead and bought them, took them back to that lady I befriended. She looked at me and she said, "You done good. That's exactly what you needed to go." She said, "That's the reason why I wouldn't tell you what to go get."
Right. Because
And
the
then
because of the because of
after
the hex
yeah,
or the whatever
I
she
got
did is
I
then
got rid of the
pertaining
head.
right specifically to you and because
Yeah,
of your knowledge from the past of and your
hmm
connection to your grandmother through the
and I mean,
bloodlines. Right.
I didn't have to
Interesting.
read too much into it. I mean, it was like it just came natural, and I was trying to understand it, trying to comprehend it, and it was. I mean, it was just like, I know this. Look at another chapter. Oh, I know that. Pick up another book. Well, I already know half of this, and I couldn't figure out
Right.
why I do it. It was just strange.
Interesting.
And then after
Wow.
everything got settled, trying to make a long story short, I got sitting at the house one day and I thought, "There's no way I can let somebody else go through this." And
Okay.
I decided, and that was back in 2007. So I called up one or two of my friends. I said, "Got a question." They said, "What's that?" I said, "What do you think about becoming a paranormal investigator?" "Oh, that's the greatest thing that ever was." I said, "How do we do it?" And I said, we'll research and find out. I said, see if these local legends are any truth to them, or if it's all hogwash, or just what Grandma used to call booger tales to keep youngins in the house after
Such
dark.
an interesting that. One second, Robert. You're that the word booger is such a no. It's we know what it means, but there's also this colloquial thing. I was talking to Daryl Benton. I don't know if you know who that is.
Oh yeah, I know
Uh,
Darrell Denton. He's good. He's a good fellow.
he's a good guy, great guy.
Yes, he is.
When I have him back on, I guarantee you. He was telling me the first time he ran across one of these that his grandfather knew about them, and he called them wood boogers.
Hmm.
It's such an interesting thing. I'm sorry. Please continue. The booger tails. I think you called them.
Speaking of the devil, when you said that, I remember my grandma talking about wood boogers when I was a kid, but I had no. I thought she was talking about ghosts, or as we say down here in the South, a lot of them will call them haints.
Hanks.
Haints. Haints.
Haints. Haints.
Hmm.
Interesting.
And I thought that's what she was talking about. I had no idea. Well,
Maybe that's the word haunting comes from.
uh huh,
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Like the base of the word haunting.
uh huh,
Interesting.
and everything just it clicked, it come together, and I asked that group of guys. I said, "Well, I said, what do you think?" And they said, "Well," I said, "we'll research and we'll see if these booger tales, hank tales, and ghost tales it holds any truth to it." And that's how I got started. I formed a team called Go Dark Paranormal Investigations, and me and my wife and and her cousin is the only three members left of Go Dark Paranormal, and we adopted George back in September of last year. No, wait a minute. I told you wrong. I told you wrong. We adopted George May of last year,
Okay.
and so we still run with Go Dark Paranormal. We don't go in to prove it that anything's haunted. We'll go in and see if we experience what everybody else claims that they are. We usually try to see if it's a electrical problem, structural problem, plumbing problem, or if they're sitting on a fault line.
Okay. I like that.
Now if you're sitting on a fault line will drive you crazy. Prime example: there was this lady. She, at the time, I was working for Terminex Termite Company, pest control.
Right.
To make a long story short on it, we beat the house to death. We couldn't find no bugs of any kind. We even looked for anything from carpenter ants to snakes to coons and bats. I mean, we covered everything. She still was having problems of hearing things in the walls of her house. And all of a sudden, she got the idea that the her house was haunted. And I asked her, I said, "How old's the house?" She said, 15-year old. I said, "Anybody die in it?" She said, "No." I said, "Did anybody get?" She said, "No." I said, "Was there a house prior to that?" She said, "No." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Here's the next $1 million question. What's your foundation of your house sitting on?" She said, "Well," she said, "the house is sitting on a rock that is about 12 feet in any direction you want to go to, bigger than the house is itself." I said, "Okay."
Okay.
I said, "What's your foundation?" She said, "Cinder block." Why? I said, "Okay." I said, "Next question. Do you have sheetrock in the house?" She looked at me sort of funny and she said, "What does sheetrock have to do with it?" I said, "It's got everything in the world to do with it." I said, "Do you have sheetrock walls?" She said, "Yes, matter of fact, I do." I said, "Are they nailed in or screwed in?" She said, "Where's this going?" I said, "Lady," I said, "I'm trying to find the source of your ghost here." I said, "Work with me." I said, "Is it nailed in or screwed in?" She said, "They're screwed in." I said, "I found your ghost." She said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "When you screw in sheetrock, that sheetrock becomes as tight as a drum head."
Right.
I, I said, "Go to the courthouse, get a geological survey of your property." I said, "I will lay $1 down against a donut that says you're sitting on a fault line." She looked at me and she said, "You're kidding." I said, "No." I said, "I'm not kidding." She said, "Okay." She said, "If I'm sitting on a fault line, what's happening?" I said, "Every time that earth moves," I said, "it's going to send vibrations." I said, "It's going into that rock, and that rock is going straight into the cinder block. That cinder block is going up through the tubiphores." I said, "And the weakest point is that sheetrock. Since that sheetrock is screwed in with screws, it's going to vibrate like a drum head. It's going to sound like somebody was walking through the house." Lo and behold,
Wow.
lo and behold, 2 weeks later, she come back and she said, "Darn you." She said, "I'm sitting on a fault line." I said, "I told you."
That's incredible. So you're like the Bob Vila of Ghost.
Well, not exactly. I try to debunk things
That's fantastic.
before
That
I
is
try.
such a. That may be my favorite part of this whole interview. Robert, once again, thank you so very much of gracing us with your presence. It has been fun, exciting, scary, as well as informative, and I appreciate it so very much that you decided to come on the Eye of Jupiter podcast. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Oh,
And
I'm honored to be here, my friend. I am. I'm honored to be
I'm
here.
honored to meet you too, man. I'm honored to meet you too. It's always great to meet great people. Great. I call you guys, for me, are the blood of the country, the real, the heartbeat, the thing that made the country great to begin with. And I
Well,
really
we do.
appreciate you coming on. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I'm a former military soldier myself, so been there.
Oh, well,
You
thank you, sir,
know,
for your service. I'm
I
a former law enforcement officer myself.
I served in the U.S. Army, active duty, 1998 till 2002. I was in the Kosovo conflict.
Ah,
Yes. So,
I salute you, sir. Thank you for
yeah,
your service.
thank you too, Faye, because being a law enforcement officer, I think in many respects is much more difficult than what I did. You know what I mean? Because I think we have a
Oh,
lot more funding and a little bit more support than you guys have. So, in the end, thank you for your service, my friend.
thank
Anyhow,
you.
one more time, Robert, let people know where they can find you, man.
Well, we're on Facebook on the NCI podcast. If I'm not bad fooled, our producer Eric Couillard said we are on. Our podcast is on Apple Play, of course, here on StreamYard. I think iHeartRadio is fixing to pick us up,
Hmm.
and I think
Spotify, maybe.
Spotify, and I think Google Play. If I'm not bad fool. If I'm not
Okay.
bad fool.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on, man. And do me a favor, stick around. I'm going to bump you off, do the exit, and we'll come back and chat a little bit at the end here.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you so very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Robert Effler. What a interesting twist and turny story those was. We went from the witch to his encounter with Harley and George, to his encounters that he had when he was younger, and then we went back to the witches, and that was fun. And the fault line and all that. There's just so many things that you just learn, doing what I do, and I just enjoy it so very much. And if you enjoy what I'm doing, go ahead and like and subscribe, and keep on coming back now. You hear? So yeah, remember, we are the Eye of Jupiter. We are the Eye, and we are aware. Thank you very much. Have a good day. You have been listening to the Eye of Jupiter podcast. If you have any strange occurrences, stories, or witnessed anything out of the ordinary, don't be afraid to send me an email at the Eye of Jupiter podcast at gmail.com, and maybe you will be on the show. And please remember, we are the Eye, and we are aware.